good morning, everybody. Today we will be hosting a public webinar on exploring with MAHs and software developers how you can connect with the PMS API. And in particular, the focus today is how the write capability works, and so how the different interested parties can start connecting with the PMS API. Today, the event will last for 2 hours. We have quite a lot of topics to touch, and for that reason, we have different experts, Spore platform architect, fire specialists, and also web and Azure cloud experts that today will give us and will guide us through the PMS API. So starting with the usual information, as you know, you can interact with us. The session is always recorded and will always be made available as usual on the EMA corporate website and on the YouTube channel, our EMA official YouTube channel. You can interact with us, as I was saying, by using a Slido tool. And the access to Slido is voluntary, of course, but if you decide to use it, it means that you're giving your consent to processing your personal data, as indeed is reported in our EMA data privacy statement for Slido. You may decide to provide your name, or you may decide to opt and remain anonymous. In any case, we will do our best to reply to your question. If you have a mobile phone, you can just look for this QRD code in this slide and you will be directed to Slido. Otherwise, if you want to use your computer, you can just type slido.com and then include the hashtag PMS API. You can submit your question. You can vote the questions also from other experts or other interested parties that submitted the question. We will try to do our best, of course, in the backend to reply to as much as question is right as possible. Those questions that are unanswered or are most starred or voted will be the question that will have the priority to be answered live. So please bear with us. We have a bit more experts than the usual webinar, so this will hopefully give us more chance to reply to you directly into Slido. Please also make sure that before submitting your question, there are no duplicates, because maybe we can give a priority to another question which has not been answered yet. Now, as I was mentioning, the event is recorded, and then the presentation will be made available on the EMA event page. Usually presentation are published in a couple of days, maximum 3 days. The recording instead takes a bit longer, so don't worry if you don't see the recording after 1 week. That's normal. We usually have to queue with our EMA publication team to make sure that the recording can be made available via the new EMA YouTube channel and EMA event webpage. Now, moving to the event, today we aim, as I mentioned, to explore with you on the functionality and the ways to connect to PMS API, the application programming interface, to make sure that stakeholders using their own internal system, in particularly industry, can connect to PMS API, and in particularly the right functionality. This meeting is particularly addressed to the need of the marketing authorization holder and their software developers. For this reason, I hope most of the attendees are indeed from MAH and as their software developer and vendor companies, because both will have to cooperate to make sure that the industry systems can actually submit in future the information into PMS API right. So we aim to share with you indeed all the knowledge that we have at the moment on the functionalities of the PMS right. We also would like to present the content and the rules that we have defined for the call of interest on PMS API. I will give you more detail soon. There is a specific timelines and also specific process that we have designed for that, because EAE API right is not yet available. We need to test it first. And for that, we need the support and the cooperation of MAHs and developer companies and vendors companies. It's also important that we share, actually, apologies, I moved too fast. We want to collect the feedback and also address as many questions as we can to hopefully clarify at our best which are your doubts, because we are also aware that maybe it's not so straightforward from the other side to connect with the PMS API right. Moving to the agenda. Welcome, I'll skip it because just done it. The first topic that I'm going to touch is the PMS, a little intro on the PMS product and also on the roadmaps. So which are the timelines, the activities that we're going to touch, how you can access PMS, and so on. Later, I will give the floor to Andre Idu, our sport platform architect from the agency. It will guide you specifically on the PMS API functionalities, and then we will give the floor, and we have reserved most of the time to our experts on Fire and also Web and Azure Cloud on the PMS integration knowledge sharing specifically. After that, I will move to give you details on the call for interest of the UAT that we plan to launch in 2025 this year. Then we will deviate a little bit from what we currently do. We really want to interact with you. So we have prepared a new survey. And for that, I really, really recommend you and invite you all to join via Slido, because every information that we will be asking you will be very valuable for us to better plan the future activities specifically for the UAT. Then we have, as usual, Q&A session, 30 minutes, and then we will be closing the event. Now, I'll move to the first session, PMS introduction and roadmap. What is PMS and where we want to land with this project? So for MAHs, probably you are the experts, so you might know already what's the scope of PMS, but this is mostly for new colleagues, particularly maybe vendors or also developers, even working for MAHs, that they need to know a bit more or a bit beyond the technical details. So PMS, colleagues, is a database that is meant to store structured and standardized authorized product data. The product's information that you can see if you already have access to PMS, READ, API or POI are information that are authorized in Europe. So you can find products that have been authorized at national level under TCP, MRP, different procedure, and also a central level, so with the central authorized products procedure. This information for us is very important because we'll be paving the way to exchange IDMP compatible data across the regulatory network, across industry, and we also aim to share this information, of course, a limited section of information across the European citizens by opening in future the public PMS API. A subset of information is already available for public via PMS POI, the user interface, but with the hit of and the release of the public API, we aim to release more information, of course, non-confidential information. So our goal is, of course, to make sure that the PMS data in a structured, ISO/DMP compatible structure can be enriched fully. This is also another milestone that we have set and is in our radar. We also want to integrate the data journey through any regulatory procedure, and for those who are aware of the business side, this is called usually the target operating model, where the data can be reused across the web form or the shortages or the variation, initial marketing authorization, anything. And we want also to make sure that the data that we stored in PMS can be trusted and a good quality. is a multi-year project, colleagues, so that's why we cannot achieve everything with one big bang goal. So just to give you a bit of information on where PMS fits, if you're familiar with the product life cycle of any authorized product, you know that a product starts from the research and development phase. Then you may request a scientific advice, you submit your initial marketing authorization. Eventually, your application gets authorized, the product starts being placed on the market, and then we also start the monitoring of the pharmacovigilance for that specific product. So across each phase, we have three, and you can see here, value stream. We call research and development, product lifecycle management value stream, and monitoring value stream. Each of them have a specific scope and is placed in a specific phase of the life cycle of the product. SPOR, and in particular PMS, is supposed to provide support to any of these phases. And you will see in the future, and maybe you already see this, that PMS is already supporting, for instance, the monitoring value stream for the ESMP shortage reporting. But in future, we will expand also the scope. So PMS at the moment is included in the PLM management value stream, but is of course interconnected across the whole product life cycle and will be more and more in the future interconnected. Just a bit recap. This slide it gives you an understanding of where actually we want to reuse the PMS data, so the structured products information across the life cycle. It's just a repetition of what I said before. Of course, you need to be able, as a MAH, to submit your data into your regulatory processes, to prepare your application, to make sure that the data are assessed and validated. And then once this is approved, you need to store the data. If these are stored correctly and of good quality, then this data could be reused and shared across the whole network. The benefit is not only for industry, is also, as I said, for passionate citizens. Of course, they can have access to a very limited set of information, public information, academia, healthcare professionals, and also, of course, the health authority in Europe. So the scope is quite big. And that's why the project is also a multi-year project. Now, guiding you through each different systems, where PMS, which is the use case of PMS, and where we want to go in future. So at the moment, PMS, we want to have PMS as a single source of truth and of information. We know already that this is going to happen in a couple of years, because at the moment we have two systems where we migrate the data. So Simon is taking data from XVMPD PMS is taking data from XVMPD and SciMed, which is our EMA internal system. But in the future, we want to become the single source of information of authorized products data. PMS is used across different systems. As you can see, we have the electronic product information, the regulatory procedure management for central authorized product. This is stored in IRIS. We also support the electronic application for a limited data sets of information. And we expose, for those who do not have access to PMS API, the same level of information via a user interface, which is called PY. This is within the life management value stream. But as I was saying before, PMS is also expanding their scope. So we started to support another value stream, which is called monitoring. And as the word says, the scope of this value stream is indeed to check and make sure that the medicines are submitted in a correct way and used across different core activities. So ESMP, for instance, is relying on PMS data, again, a limited data set, to make sure that we can prevent and manage on time the human medicine shortages, and to make sure that in case of, hopefully not, but another public health emergency or any major event, we can promptly act on it. Also ASU, which is using data for antimicrobials in animals. And also the EV human, we are transitioning to that, but the scope is basically to analyze information related to the suspect adverse reaction to medicines. So as you can see, PMS is really expanding the scope, is really going to be used mostly or more and more across the different systems at the agency and to support the network. Now, coming to the PMS data model. PMS, as you can see, this is a very rough diagram. Is also available on UAG chapter 2, but in essence, PMS data model is much bigger than the current system that you as MAHs are using, so HCMPD. We are talking about around 118 feeds. Most of them are indeed repeatable. And you can find the deep description of each single element into UAG chapter 2. This chapter contains business rules, data modeling, and also technical information related to the conformance, the repeatability, which RMS list we are using, and so on. Along with this chapter 2, I would encourage, in particularly the developers and vendors, to read chapter 6, because in January we have released a new guide that explains from a technical point of view how to connect for the to the right PMS API. And it gives you more technical information such as fire examples. And today you will see many of these being presented by our experts. Just for you to clarify, this was mostly an example to show you how each single class of attributes within the PMS data model that you can easily access from either UI or in particular for this event from API, structured specific data sets. So you can have information pharmaceutical product level, ingredient level with structured data, a manufactured item, whether you have a tablet or a powder for solution. So each single information that you find as part of the core authorized product information and also the dossier is also structured in a meaningful way to be made ISO/DMP compatible. This is for us very important because it's the basis to be able to exchange products data across the network. So each color you can see is referring to a specific definition, a specific area, but in essence is tracking everything that is available and mentioned in chapter 2. So here you can find also the links. I will leave it for your future reference in case you want to have a second look to this presentation. And now I will move on how you can access PMS, the standardized data in PMS. I was mentioning before, we have released in 2024 two ways to access PMS. So one is the PMS API. Here you can see different times, different deadlines that we hit for specific targeted stakeholders. We started with the MAHs, and then we completed in December 24, with the full access to all NCAs. And the PMS API, of course, is not sufficient that you can only read it. We also must release the right capability to let you submit the minimum set of information that you should be able to submit it via machine-to-machine connection. And this is what is the scope of also this event, is pending to be delivered. In addition to that, we want to also open the public PMS API. We're not sure we can hit on 2025, but it will definitely be in the milestone for beginning 2026. And then from the PMS product user interface, for those companies who do not rely on the API, we also released a user interface to let them access in any case and check their data. Everybody can access, even the public in this case. Now, coming to the types of roles that, how can you access PMS API? In PMS, we have defined specific roles based on the scope and based on the tool that you want to access. So in this case, we focus on API. I won't touch PUI. So the first things that you need to do, whether as an NCA or as an industry, you need to request, according to Chapter 1, the industry or NCA admin role. This is an administrative role that will allow you, is the only role that allows you to request the access to PMS API. If you request this access, you will see that in your IAM account, you will have available a button called Request API Access. And this, if you click it, you need to fulfill a form, submit your information, will be granting you this role, the PMS Industry API User role, which is corresponding to Chapter 5 of our guidance to Level 2A, which is the full access to any information, even commercially sensitive information for that specific organization. And the same is for NCAs. The difference is that industry can see only the products that they owned for that organization, while NCA can see any type of products as authorized in Europe. So the key aspect of these roles is that you don't have a direct read or in future write access to API. If you have requested the admin role, it's fine, but you need to do an extra step, requesting also the API user by using the button, as I said. If you are the very first administrative user role for that organization, your role will be approved by the EMA because we need to make sure security aspect is fulfilled. Any subsequent request of administrative role will be possible to be approved straight away by the first administrator roles. Of course, each organization is recommended, and this is very important, to have at least 2 user roles. This is in case somebody leaves the company, somebody goes on sick leave for a long time. It's always strongly recommended to have more than 1 user admin user role. And the same is for the competent authority. It's also very important that you can request this role because this role will be giving you the possibility to receive the client credential to access the PMS API. There is a specific process, so you need to make sure that you have registered your OMS access and that you have also an active account in IAM. If you have fulfilled these 2 requirements, you can start requesting your role, and you can request, of course, the administrative role. And whether you are the first one or not, there is a different process, as I explained to you. This process is explained also in UAG Chapter 1. So if it's not clear, don't worry, Chapter 1 will explain everything. And once you've been granted this role, you can push the button, say Request API, and you will be directed to a form where it requests you to submit specific information, such as your email, where you will be receiving your secret credential. And then you can connect to the PMS API. For PUI, there is another process, but this is not for each event, even though I left in the slide in any case. Please make sure that if you want to request the access to PMS API, you need to undergo a separate process, which is this one that I have described to you. The fact that you have access to SPOR version 1 for OMS, RMS, or to SNS API, it doesn't automatically grant you the access to PMS API. PMS API follows a different process. And then I think I have my last 2 slides, just to give a bit of information. We have different level of accessibility of products data, which are mentioned in Chapter 5. The level 1 is the general public, while the level 2, I think, is the most important for you, is the level dedicated to the marketing authorization holders and service providers. So level 2 and level 3 are requested per organization ID. So you can be granted access, but you need to be linked to an organization identifier. You can have a 2A level for NAHs or a 2B level. So in the case of the API, you can only have access to level 2A because API will grant you the full access to any data this organization is owning. And then it will be up to the company to define the limitation for a specific user to access specific data sets. For level 3, health authorities, full access, as I was saying, is granted. For the service provider, so developers or vendors company, if you want to access PMS API level 2A for industry or level 3, you need to access on behalf of the company or your clients. This is for security reasons, and it means that your client will have requested and will be granted the secret credentials, and the secret credential will have to be shared with you. So you can start aligning the systems internally and prepare also for the right PMS API. As I was mentioning, the secret credentials are shared with the admin role and our org level. And in future, when we will be opening the PMS public API, our willingness will be that the public can access, of course, the limited data sets, but without requiring any secret credential, any appropriate registration to IAM. This will be our willingness, and we hope we can achieve it. Very generally, if you didn't receive any access to PMS API yet, you can, but you have already an API access for the read-only because the write doesn't exist at the moment. You don't need to do anything. Your write privileges will be added into your existing user role. You don't need to request anything else in your EMA account management portal. The name of your role will remain the same. You will just be granted read and write access. If you, at the time when we will be opening the right PMS API, didn't request yet the access, then in that case, you just follow the same process described in chapter 1. We will just amend the right endpoints into this role. So you, with one single request, API access, you will be granted both privileges, write and edit. So we want to keep it very simple. It's very, very important that you start engaging with your developers and with your companies, vendor companies, because we are aiming to open a PMS Write API. As you can see from this roadmap, I will invite you to focus most in particularly to Q2. If you see, we have scheduled, our willingness will be to start opening a UAT in API for a minimum viable set of information to support the ESNP, which is the legal mandate for MAHs to submit the information related to the shortages. And to do that, but also to start moving towards the full write capability of PMS, we need to launch a UAT to test the functionality. And for that, we need to know whether you are ready or how much time you as an MAH can be ready to write information to PMS via API. The goal is indeed to open the PMS API MVP, ideally in Q3, but of course we are open to shuffle the timelines because we are already aware that some industries and vendors, they need more time for that. This is in essence to make sure that industry can further proceed with submission of specific information. As I was saying, there are products impacted by a specific list and they need to submit the data. At the moment, this data can be submitted only via product user interface, but we know that big pharma, they rely on the use of PMS API. So that's why we want to engage with you and we want to make sure that the bright MVP can land SAP with you. So it's very important for you that you consider specific actions. So this is something that you need to do in cooperation with your developers and vendors. So we recommend you to request the access to PMS API, start seeing if your system is compatible with what we have released in PMS Read API. We also invite the industry to prepare their data for the specific data submissions and also to define processes to maintain their data up to date and to start thinking ahead, because once we will be opening the PMS Write API, you need to have a process in place to maintain the data up to date. Also, very important, please make sure that you start engaging with your developers, even you have internally or with your vendor company, because you need to work closely with them, because they will be the one that can ensure a seamless machine-to-machine connection and make sure that your RIM system is actually ready to submit data to PMS API. And this is just to give you a bit of information on why this is important. It's important that you start aligning your RIM system towards PMS API because there are a bunch of benefits on using that. First of all, we need to improve the automation, so improve efficiency. We want to simplify the way you submit the data, and a large volume of data is foreseen to be submitted because we have deadlines. So if you can see this diagram, because of the ESMP shortage, so the reporting of shortages, the ULTM list products, you can see that we have a lot of product impacted. Around 83,000 products needs to be submitted. So needs to be submitted. They need to submit specific information such as manufacturer data, pack size into PMS by the end of 25. And also there are products that are not included in the ULTM list, and we're talking about around 422,000 products that have a deadline to submit manufacturer data structured by end of 26. So it's important that you align the products, the information, and you start using PMS API or preparing to use it, because we want to have you in a good position to submit the real-time updates, to mitigate and minimize the level of error that you can make, because human error can make errors. And also we want to achieve a more transparency, so a better data tracking and reporting of capability. So there are a high volume of information that you need to submit. An API for big pharma is really key and essential. Just for you to know, there are opportunities that we aim in future, as I was mentioning before. We want to move towards a full digitalization, so we need to start transitioning, of course, with the replacement of the XCVMPD. It won't come this year, it won't come next year, but it's once we started, there is no way to go back. So the direction is to replace it, and we need to make sure that you are able to submit the data via API and PY. We want to integrate PMS into a regulatory process, and we want also to make sure that the PMS can be accessible also by the public. Last but not least, the European Health Data Space regulation. This is another aspect where we foreseen impact and level of cooperation with the PMS data, specifically in the context of the e-prescription and e-dispensation, and also the link to the electronic product information. So as you can see, a lot of data in the future will become IDMP compatible, and PMS will be the core system of these activities. So with all of this, I'm giving now the floor to my colleague who will guide you through PMS API for read and write MVP. Andre, the floor is yours. I'll stop sharing so you can take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andre Idu. I'm the Spore Platform Architect, and I will be sharing a few of the more technical details on the PMS API. Right, so I will be walking you through the PMS API and its capabilities. The read capability, as Veronica mentioned, is already available for external users to register and to use, and I will explain how we will release the write capability as a minimum viable product and what users will be able to do on that. So first, an overview of the differences between the read capability and the write capability. One of the key differences is that they actually implement different FHIR versions. So the current capability of reading data is implemented on FHIR version 4.4.0 or R5 Preview 2. While the write capability, which will include a means to actually get data in the same format, so to read the data as well, per product, is implemented or will be implemented in the FHIR R5 native version, that is version 5.00. So on the read capability, we can search products based on fire standard search criteria and get all the information related to a product by its ID. On the right capability, we'll still be able to get that data by ID and then submit the updates for the specific data elements that are in scope for now in this minimal viable product. Both capabilities will use the same authentication authorization mechanism, and that is through the standard of OAuth 2 and the client credentials flow, and using the same set of credentials that are generated when you request access. So for the read capability, last year we released access to different types of users. So we started that in July with access to industry users, and in September and December opened up the access to NCAs. In the following quarters and years, we aim to release the public API version and also move the read capability to the FHIR R5 major version, so that we are aligned and using a final version of the FHIR specification. Here you can see a snapshot. We'll see snapshots, and I'll show you elements from the PMS API in the following slides as well. What data do we have in PMS? I think Veronica also summarized this, but I'll recap. So we have data for authorized, centrally authorized products and non-centrally authorized products. And we have loaded that data through integrations from the SIAMED system and XCV-MPD. SIAMED being the regulatory process management system at the EMA, and XCV-MPD being the medicinal product dictionary for vigilance. We have published our migration or data integration rules in the implementation guide chapter 7. So please refer to that to understand how we made the translation of data and where fields are surviving either from SIAMED or XCV-MPD if we have the same data in both systems. Taking that into account, with SIAMED and XCV-MPD data, we're not able to cover the entire data model as defined by the PMS implementation guide. So we expect that a large volume of the fields will still be needed to be enriched by marketing authorization holders. Here's a high-level overview on the entities and which ones we were able to load data from SIAMED and XCV-MPD and for which we are still missing data. So wherever we have a gray, we still need to enrich. The granularity of these entities might not be equal between themselves, but it's just a way to give an overview of which areas we will need enrichment in the future. So as Veronica also explained, there's a specific process to get access to the PMS API. Please refer to that in chapter 1. Access is defined by the organization ID that is related to the admin role that was granted to the specific super user. And then we can have either industry or NCAs having access, and industry users are able to see the product data that their organization is the marketing authorization holder of. So a limited number of products that is in scope for their organization, and national competent authorities will be able to see to access all the product data that we have in PMS. Again, in terms of read capabilities, we are able to search for product data, and we're using the FHIR standard search capabilities. That includes chaining of query parameters, so we can search a product by its name, but also by an authorization number, which is following a chained approach. And we can retrieve all the information that we have for any specific product. I have given a demo of how that works, so please refer to that. It is published on the EMA website. it is part of a webinar that was meant as a training for industry users. So again, as Veronica said, if you don't have access yet to the Read API, you can follow the process to request that access, you can see that in the previous slides of this presentation or in the implementation guides, chapter 1. And again, caution, if you have access for OMS, RMS, or SMS already granted, that does not automatically give you access to the PMS APIs. So you have to request to make a separate request for access to PMS. And moving on to the write capability. This is a new capability we will expose this year. In Q2, we're preparing for exposing UAT of this capability. It is what we consider a minimal viable product to allow enrichment of two very specific areas of data that are required for ESMP. So we will have a UAT, and then we aim to release the capability in the following quarter, so somewhere in Q3. And further down the road, we are already working on expanding the API capability to all the data that we expect to have in PMS, all the data elements. Again, that will follow the R5 major version. And at the same time, we understand the requirement for users to be able to test out sending updates or creating data in PMS. And for that, we will look into the best solution where you can do this in a non-production environment, which for now we're calling it a practice sandbox, but an environment that is not production, where you can submit data and then get a proper understanding of how the API works and what the repercussions are of the data that you submit. So quite important milestones for the next 2 quarters coming. Right, so on the API write capability, we will be able to update to 2 specific areas of data. One is the manufacturing business operations of a medicinal product, and the other one is related to the pack sizes of the medicinal product and its packaging. Again, we're implementing the FHIR R5 major version. We are calling this a minimum viable product. Our URLs will mention that it is an alpha version, so this is a very limited scope that we're releasing, and we'll be building on that. We actually want to have as a target the full read and write capabilities working on FHIR R5 major. So that is what we aim to have in most likely 2026. The process of updating data is an asynchronous process. What that means is that there are 2 steps. Basically, you initiate an update operation via a post to the PMS API, and then you need to poll the API until you receive a status. You're able to read the status of that operation. So submitting an operation will give you back an ID, which you can use to poll the outcome of that operation, and you will have a status which tells you whether that operation is still in progress or you have a success or error. And if there's an error, there will be details about what has caused the error. We will validate the fields, and specifically the manufacturing business operation and pack sizes, based on the business rules described in chapter 2. While the payload itself may have other fields related to medicinal product data, the way this implementation works is that we will only take manufacturing business operation and pack size updates and apply them to PMS data. So any other field will be ignored. Here are some examples on the specific data elements that we will update. So this is an example on how to update pack size data. The requirement is actually to submit these updates on non-centrally authorized products. So bear that in mind. and the data submission needs to be driven by the Union List of Critical Medicines, because that is what the current priority is. So if you're not familiar with how the PMS API structures this data, this is an example of how we express a pack size of 10 vials, and we basically have a specific extension on the package product definition file resource here. And this mentions that is a quantity with the value of 10, and it refers to a term from RMS, and more specifically from the list of units of presentation. And this is the actual RMS term ID out of that list, which represents the term vial. So with this, we can read 10 vials. So this is what's expected to be submitted, this type of extension, as part of enrichment of pack sizes. And then on manufacturing business operation, the actual data model, the full data model for manufacturer data is more complex than what's shown here. So there's a reference to an OMS location for where the actual activity is happening. And this you can see here as a participant element inside of an activity definition resource. And this participant has a extension for manufacturing business operation, and it refers to the actual location ID from OMS where this is happening. So that is the key information that needs to be submitted here. The display value is then the name of that location or organization in OMS. So bear in mind, for manufacturing data, we have the OMS reference, what type of operation is happening there, and then a start and end date, a confidentiality indicator, and authorization related fields. So the reference number, the effective date, and the regulator that gave that authorization. Please refer to chapter 2, where each element is described. Yeah, with the new implementation guide that my colleagues will share further examples of the full data model. Yeah, so again, this slide also recaps what I just said, how to find documentation related to how to understand the technical details of the way we will write data. The implementation guide is still up to be updated, so please check that in the following weeks, months, and we will communicate that as well. Yeah, what you will find in the implementation guide for the RIGHT API specifically, which is a FHIR specific type of implementation guide, are FHIR profiles and extensions, value sets, conformance resources, and other artifacts to help you understand how to implement that. And with that, this is the end of my section. So I will hand it over to my colleagues, Louis, Rick, for the next section. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andre. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the FHIR implementation guide that's been shared. You can see a little brief screenshot of it down the bottom. I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to look at that, but I'm going to talk about the principles of it and what it's all about. So a FHIR implementation guide, it's this kind of standard technical document published by EMA, but it uses the standard FHIR tooling. And so it comes out in this international standard format. So you'll find that every implementation guide you see that EMA produces or that anybody produces uses the same format. It's a technical document, so it's not going to be giving us the sort of the rationale and the plans and all those details, but it's about the actual data that you're going to be sending backwards and forwards in the FHIR format. So yeah, it does need some FHIR technical knowledge to read it fully. I mean, obviously you can go and have a look at it, but yeah, it'll take a little bit of getting used to, as anything. But yes, and goes into a lot of detail, even down to the cardinalities, multiplicities of each field, So it's not really something that you're intended to sort of read line by line necessarily, but all the information is in there at a detail level to refer to when it comes to implementation. And a lot of the benefit you get that you perhaps won't see just by reading it is that it comes with machine readable parts. So you're seeing the HTML when you read it, but behind the scenes there's XML and JSON profiles that they're called. And you can put those into your Fire tooling when you get to that stage and automatically validate and check your data. So you're really only seeing the surface. For ordinary humans see the surface, but there's computer-based stuff inside that your techies will be able to use. So what's in this implementation guide? We can put anything we like in an implementation guide. It's just an HTML package, but we tend to concentrate on an overview of the API, first of all, on the front pages. We've not done too much in there now. I think based on some feedback we've had, we'll probably expand that with some more content, some diagrams and so on. So we'll probably expand that. But the main content is these profiles of the Fire resources. So profiles are where we take Fire kind of off the shelf, if you like, and we say, for this application of Fire, we're going to use these pieces in this exact way. So we're just kind of taking a subset of Fire and documenting that subset that we're using and how we're going to use it. We've defined some Fire extensions. Most projects in Fire need to have some custom extensions. That's completely normal. And we have these things called value sets, code systems. They're the codes, the referentials, and in fact they're just Fire versions of the RMS system that most of us will be familiar with. And yeah, the profiles use the extensions and the value sets. So the profiles are very much the kind of top of the tree that say how we're going to use medicinal product resource in this, how we're going to use ingredient resource in this, and they include references to the other content. And then example XML, and in the draft that's been published recently, the example XML is not there yet. So we're working on those, and we've got those ready to put in. And quite rightly, people were asking where that was. So that was one of our top questions on the recent review. But what does it not have? People were saying, well, where are the following things? And this is information that we need to make available and point you to, if not directly from ourselves, but probably won't be in this implementation guide, this particular package. So yeah, general Fire training material, references, overview of the project, sort of why we're doing this, and so on, the legislation. That probably won't be in the technical documentation. It also will not probably have the actual final URLs that you have to kind of go to when you're finally deploying your data. So we talk about we define the API and some of the API endpoint URLs, in fact, but not the final with the actual full URL on it, if you know what I mean. So we give you the end part of the URL, but not the actual HTTPS : whatever it might be. That's kind of out of scope of this technical document. We won't include things like service levels and how many milliseconds things are going to take. Again, that's sort of a bit out of scope for this. And some of the rationale and plans, again, that won't be in here. So we're concentrating on the technical specifications of the Fire itself, kind of the payload, if you like, and perhaps not the content that's around it. So yeah, we put this out a few weeks ago now, and we've got some great feedback. And I think the feedback perhaps hasn't been shared, but I'm going to guide through sort of some of the more sort of commonly asked questions, and we'll probably reply. Well, I know we'll reply to all the specific questions, but not in this webinar, but in a kind of more formal way after this. But there were some common threads. We had a kind of how do I get started with this request, which it makes perfect sense. Some of this may go in the IG, the IG implementation guide, as I'm calling it. We may expand the early parts of the IG indeed. But one of the advantages of using Fire, it's an off-the-shelf standard. So I don't want to just sort of fob this off and say, go and look at stuff, but to some extent, there is a lot of stuff online for free. That is the benefit of using Fire. It'll be new to all of us who've not seen it before. Like anything we could come up with would be new. But the advantage of Fire is that thousands of people are using it around the world and on different similar other agencies are using it and so on. So there's a lot of common stuff out there for that you can get to freely available. So there's a couple of links on the next slide. Obviously we won't go there now, but if you've got copies of these slides or the recording, you can go and browse those. These are just 3 of thousands of links that you can find with a quick Google. Different levels of things here. So this hands-on guide is just it's like a PowerPoint that has 20 or so slides that you can read through. There's an excellent long, I think it's like an hour long or a 90-minute long video, a full sort of training course here from some of our HL7 colleagues. HL7 being the organization that FIRE comes from. And then you can even go and do formal classroom training if you want to, various people provide that. So you can sign up for a 2-day course on FIRE if your technical guys are really looking for that. So most of these are not specific to regulatory or products necessarily, but the point of FIRE is that all FIRE applications kind of work the same, whether you're doing prescriptions, manufacturing of drugs, or appointments for patients. It's similar chunks of FIRE being moved around in the same way. So background information you can read on FIRE online will almost certainly still be applicable to this. People have asked about how you do FIRE development. How do I actually start writing some code? I mean, maybe you're writing code, maybe somebody else is doing that for you. But if you go to this link, you can see source code toolkits, to read and write these resources, validate these resources, create them from other things in all the major languages, and a lot of the not so major languages. The FIRE, as I say, the FIRE has a great ecosystem. There's tens of thousands of people doing FIRE that we know of, and there's all sorts of great open source stuff out there. So which version of FIRE? This has been a bit confusing, and and for a few reasons. So there are 2 APIs on PMS. So there's the read API, which has been around for a while, and that uses this FIRE 440, and people tend to call it R4, but that's a mistake. It's not actually FIRE R4, for what it's worth. It's actually an early draft of FIRE R5. And the new Write API does use FIRE R5. Andre pointed this out before. So this is kind of the finished version of R5 that the new API uses. The old version, not the old version, but the pre-existing version uses this 4.1, but it's not a hugely different version of FIRE. It's not the R4 version of FIRE, which is a little bit different from FIRE. So these two they're both drafts of the same standard, or one's a file and one's a draft. So they're very close. I did a quick check before I put this slide together, and about 90% of the data, depends how you count it, is exactly the same in 4.40 and 5.00. So these 2 APIs we get are not radically different, luckily. And we do have a mapping. The API, you don't need to do the mapping. It does it kind of for you, but we'll publish the mapping for those people who want to get data in one format and convert it maybe and send it back. The normal way of working will be that you would read using the Write API and then write back using the Write API. So you get FIRE 5 in each direction. And it's the direction of travel for EMA. All our systems will be on FIRE R5. So a quick summary of the API, and Luis is going to give us some more detail about this in a few minutes, is there's a way to get and a way to kind of send the data back. So we use this thing called $everything. It's slightly strange, but that's what it's called. It's called a FIRE operation. And it's also supported by the main PMS SPORE v2 API, which has been around for a while. So this get everything, it gets you the product and all the bits of the product as well. So you get the ingredients and you get the packages and you get the authorizations and so on in one long, what we call bundle, one long blob of XML. That's all the data, and you get it in the up-to-date format for this API. And then to send the data back, so you can make some changes to that data as appropriate. And then you do this post back. For those of you who know about these things, your technical guys certainly will. You post back to this thing called $merge, and that does a slightly unusual thing where we combine the data that is changed with the data on PMS, because we're allowing only certain changes in this Write API, and we want to make sure to filter out any extraneous changes that shouldn't be in there. There's a little bit of editing you need to do to each resource to say whether it's a change or a new resource. So that's sort of going a little bit beyond the scope of today, perhaps. And there's a bit more about that from Lewis coming up. So yeah, why are we doing that? I mean, why are we not? Well, we are not supporting single resource read and write from this API. It's a kind of a product and all data read, and a product and all data write. That's just the way this works. The working with the pieces of the product, if you like, individual packs and so on, that's something that the PMS read API is all about. This API, this new API, update API, does the whole thing in one go. So we don't support the individual reads or writes. So yeah, so I just mentioned this, but why are we using this dollar merge and not just using a more traditional, for those of you who know about it, fire rest, just normal put overwrite? It is because of this principle that we're at this point only allowing updates to certain fields. So we use this merge that will take what you send and combine it correctly with the PMS data, rather than just taking what you send and overwriting, basically, which is what will happen down the line. Yeah, so merge behind the scenes, getting quite technical again, really, is using a fire transaction. It's a way of sending multiple resources at once. So we're not updating one resource, waiting and updating the next. We're sending all the data in one go. And there's some magic behind the scenes that inserts all those records for you. So merge accepts this transaction bundle, and you get a transaction response back from it, which says where the data was inserted and whether it was successful and so on. Yeah, and this is new. The dollar merge is a new thing. You won't find it in the Spore API v2. It's a kind of compatible thing, but it's actually a new operation that we've brought forward for this. As I mentioned, yeah, we send all the data basically, and the idea is you send back all the data that you receive from the API, just with the changes that you want to make. The idea is you don't miss out other data. You send all of the data back with the changes, even though in this case we're only actually are going to act on the changes. The payload should be the full data that you first received. Moving along, yeah, and then we get this thing called a fire transaction response back, which is a bundle of data, lots of data, mirroring what you sent, but sort of annotated with, okay, yes, this was received, okay, or this was created, and it tells you for each new resource where it was put on the server. So you get an ID back for each resource. Yeah, so dollar merge and some other parts of these APIs, we have this asynchronous pattern, just because it's hard to know how long these things will take. This is all documented in the Spore API version 2 and in the online in this asynchronous thing. When you send data to this API, you may immediately get a 200, which means, okay, got it, done, received. Or you may get this thing called a 200 accepted. And that means, yes, we're working on it. We're not going to give you the data back immediately, as is the case of the 200, where you receive the data back immediately. But you get a message saying, go and look at this location. The content location says where you need to go to get the data. So with all of these, there's a kind of two-phase thing. You may get the data back instantly, or you may get a URL to go and check. So your code needs to be aware of that and act accordingly. Sometimes it'll come back instantaneously. Sometimes you get a polling thing that you have to go and get the data from. And again, I think Luis will cover that in a bit more detail. So short answer is that somebody's asked, will there be a purely synchronous option? No, we'll always give you this possibility of synchronous, immediate, or possibility of getting it asynchronously. And we haven't yet covered details of exactly how often you poll and so on. But Fire has a built-in way to manage that. If you hammer the API too much, you may get a thing, like any API, you may get a thing back saying, whoa, slow down, you're doing it too much. Or we may reply with a, fine, we've got your request, we're not ready yet, please come back in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, etc. So that'll be managed, but we haven't fully bottomed that out yet. Mentioned the Spore API document as well before. That still stands. It's still the general principles of these APIs, although each API has more detailed stuff that comes with it, in, for instance, the IG. So yes, so those things still apply, but the merge and so on is documented, and the dollar everything is documented. more specifically in these APIs. So so that kind of like you know, goes above and beyond what's in the original document. But yes, this write API, it is a new thing. It's not an implementation of that API. It's extra to the kind of Spore API definitions. Yeah, some people were saying, or somebody said, we can't find some parts of the fire data in this IG. There are different tabs. People probably come in looking at the key elements table. Just to say that if you look on the snapshot table, you'll see more data. Key elements, pardon me, is like a summary table. So if you're missing things in there, don't forget to look in this snapshot table. People say, there are URLs in this document, but they don't work. We've looked them up and they don't work. And this is probably the most common question I get when I'm teaching fire. You know, URL, a broken URL, like a spelling mistake, triggers everybody. But yeah, they're not really broken. Some of the URLs you see in the documentation, they're not actually web addresses. They're more like namespaces. They're unique names for things. Yes, they look like a web address, but they're not really for clicking on in a browser. They're more like sort of names that you refer to, constant names or labels that we refer to throughout Fire, so we know what things are what. But if you go, you know, it's not underlined, it's not actually clickable. It's not meant to be. If you cut and paste that into your browser, it probably won't give you anything useful. So yeah, don't be surprised. It's not a broken link. It's just the way these things work. Getting very specific, but we had a question about slicing and what are slices. They're a kind of documentation thing, so you don't need to really understand what they are to use them, but just because it's an unusual word, I thought I'd clarify it a little bit. If we're documenting the same part of Fire in two different ways, so there's multiple identifiers in Fire. An MPID identifier might be documented one way, and another identifier might be documented another way, because they have slightly different rules in the XML. Those things where we go one way or the other are called slices, and that's really all they are. If you see a thing like this, identifier : MPD, it means that's a slice name in terms of Fire. So a technical thing, nothing to worry about. You can read about it in there if you want to know how that works. I think my last one. Another one was, yeah, we have question marks in the Fire documentation sometimes, and it looks like, oh, this is a bit of a to-do item, or is it unfinished? No, it doesn't mean it's unfinished. It just means this is a sort of a variable thing. We're saying here, you can use the publication status question mark, or that's preferred way, but you can put other codes in there. So this is just a Fire documentation convenience. It doesn't mean that things are not finished or broken, or, you know, it's a to-do item. Okay, I think I've gone over a little bit, but I'll hand over to Lewis now, and he can carry on from here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luis Gouveia, and I work on the back end of this API. I'll guide you through the Fire operations we can use and present you the structure we expect in the requests. We have two available operations. One is the get bundle, where we will get in Fire 5 the structure we want to change. And then we have the merge, where we'll pick the previous body and we will change it according to the change we want to apply on PMS. This second request, as we'll see later on, can have a asynchronous or synchronous return. So the resources we will be dealing with are basically four: medicinal product definition, packaged product definition, activity definition, and regulated authorization. There are two regulated authorizations in our system, the marketing one and the manufacturing one. The one that is important for us is the...
Luis, I think you might not be sharing.
Okay, sorry. Let me see why that is not happening. Yeah. Yes, share. Okay, sorry. I don't know why that happened. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, good now.
Okay, perfect. So coming back to this, we have two operations, the get bundle and the merge. On the get bundle, we will get the structure we have in Fire 5. And then on the merge, we will apply the changes to it, and we will be changing our product. Moving on to the next slide, we show the four domain resources we are editing. This is the medicinal product definition, packaged product definition, activity definition, and regulated authorization. There are two regulated authorizations, the marketing one and the manufacturing one. The only one we are editing is the manufacturing one. For medicinal product definitions and packaged product definitions, although we cannot create or delete them, we can edit them. We will see this in a bit more detail afterwards. So we have about 13 12 or 13 properties that we can edit. This is the list. We are listing this because one of the questions we got was that it was not very understandable what was the matching between the fire resource and what we are actually changing in business terms. And so to provide you a bit more clarity, we have on this slide, on the next one, the matching. For example, in fire, medicinal product definition, .operation, .type, you will find the spore list manufacturing activity. And in this case, if we have this code, 480, it means it's a manufacturer of medical device. The same for contained item quantity, which is just the node we use to provide you the package size, which you can also change. It's also an editable property. Here, this is the flow. This is the user journey. So first we go to the read API, because only there we have the search capability, where we can search for the PMS product we want to change. Then we go to the write API already with the PMS ID. And we do that first get everything, where we will get the bundle containing those up to those 4 domain resources that we can change. Then we will do the merge. This is the most important operation. It's here that we will be actually changing and persisting data on PMS. And then we might get asynchronously the request. If that's the case, we will need to do a 4th request. But this is only necessary if on 3 we return 202 accepted instead of 200 OK, as we will see later. Now, in the next slide, I will provide you a few more details on this 3rd operation, the merge, which is the most important one. So first, we use the fire message returned in the 2nd request, the get, as the basis of our merge. We have to change the bundle type from search chat to transaction. We will see this in a minute, in the next slide. We have to add to each resource, and this is what we call annotations. We will have to add this entry.request, where we will send a put. We will say this is a put request, because we want to change the domain resource we're on. If we want to create a new resource from scratch, which is only possible for regulated authorizations and activity definitions, we will have a post. If we want to delete them, we will have a delete annotation. We will see this here in the examples after this slide. So we also have a few errors and warnings, and we would like to present you this slide so that you are aware of a few business rules we have. For example, the request will fail in case the version of your medicinal product definition differs from the one in PMS. That's why it's so important that we do the get request, that we don't let pass much time between our get request and our write request. Because if we do our get on a Tuesday and we do our write on a Wednesday, it might be that in the meantime, there was a change on PMS and our basis for our change is no longer valid. If that's the case, you will get this conflict and you will have to do the get again to retrieve the latest version. Then when you do a creation or deletion of a medicinal product definition or packaged product definition, if you attempt to do one, you will get an error, because those are domain resources you are not meant to create or delete. A request cannot contain duplicated manufacturers for the same operation. A request where one or more operations don't have a manufacturer will also return an error. A request where one or more manufacturers do not have at least one manufacturer operation will also return an error. If a request is sent where one or more packaged product definitions don't have at least one package size, although we will persist it on PMS, we will return a warning, because this is not expected. And if you attempt to modify non-editable resources, those changes will be completely ignored. So if, let's say, if in a medicinal product definition, you attempt to change the product name, although you will not get an error or a warning, you will that change will not be applied to the domain resource. Now moving to the examples. So here is an example of the get bundle. So we're already on the right API. So this is already Fire 5, R5. But we see that here we get the search set in the results. It means that you are getting this bundle. You're not applying it yet. So we have the version 16, and this is important for the following slides. And we see that our package size, it's 10. Now, if we move to the next slide, we are already on the merge request. So what we did is what we were mentioning previously. We changed this bundle type from search set to transaction. We changed the pack size from 10 to 20. And then we add this annotation to say that we are changing the package product definition. So we're not creating a package product definition. We're not deleting it. We are just editing it. If we go into the detail of the return, we see that we will get an asynchronous response this time. It could have been 200 OK, and in that case, you would get the body of the response immediately here in the body. As it was asynchronous, you will see on the return headers a content location containing the URL you will have to do the polling on until you get the response. So you will see in the next slide what is the response. In this example, it was asynchronous, so HTTP 202. If it was synchronous, we will get HTTP 200 OK. So let's see now the details of the response in the next slide. So as you can see, we got a successful change. Our pack size is now 20, moved on from 10. And the version was incremented to 17. Now this is my last slide, and so while on the previous example we are doing a rather simple change, considering we are not adding or deleting entire domain resources, we are just manipulating existing domain resources, in this case the package product definition. Here we would need to add a manufacturer. Adding a manufacturer is slightly more complex, as it involves creating 2 domain resources from scratch and manipulating an existing domain resource, the medicinal product definition. So to do that, you would have to add an activity definition, add a regulated authorization of type manufacturing, and then add also an operation here on the medicinal product definition. So adding a new node. I would also like to show you here, go back just to show you that what we did was changing an existing package size. We could have added a new package size, but that's not what we did. We manipulated an existing one. So to add a package size, even if you want to add one, in our example, we were just editing, we would not need to create a new domain resource. We would just need to manipulate an existing one, unlike what happens in the manufacturer, where you would have to add domain resources to add a manufacturer and remove domain resources to delete a manufacturer. And this is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I'll take over because now we have another session related to details to share with you on the call of interest for indeed the PMS API write capability. So with all the information that you have received from our colleagues, I would like now to show you a few details. Our goal, I was mentioning before, is to launch the possibility to test with MAHs and vendors and developer companies the PMS API write. The scope for us is to make sure that the marketing authorization holders can successfully submit information, even though these are very limited. You have seen from Andre's presentation, we are aiming to open PMS write at the beginning as a first go live for a limited data set, specifically structured manufacturer data and pack size. So we're talking about 18 field maximum. for non-centrally authorized products owners. And we would like to test with the industry whether you can successfully submit this information and connect specifically from your regulatory information management system to our PMS API from the machine-to-machine connection. The deadlines, the dates for launching the UAT, as I mentioned before, are pretty flexible. We have targeted, but for us is an ideal target date is Q2 of this year. But of course, it will depend on the readiness of the testers. So we have got initial information from colleagues who were already looking at the right implementation guide from right PMS API that our colleagues Rick and Luis and Marco also have shared and published on our website. And we got the initial feedback that they need from 3 to 6 months. So I would really invite you later to join our survey, because for us it is a unique opportunity to understand more from your side, your level of preparedness. We plan to structure the UAT in 2 rounds. The first one is to make sure that you can test indeed the right API access and functionality. If the tester identifies any bug or has any further comments that can improve, we will be then prioritizing triage accordingly. And after the EMA has fixed the critical and what is deemed blocker for the go live of the right MVP API, we will ask the testers to run a second round to confirm that the bugs and the blockers have been fixed and they can successfully submit information. We have circulated this call for interest across the industry trade organizations. This communication was sent out from the EMA on 6th of March, and we have set up a deadline for nomination to the 8th of April this year, end of business day. Of course, this is not all. How we define the process for the nomination. So we have defined up to 5 representatives per industry trade organizations. And of course, based on a specific justification, additional nomination can be submitted. Most importantly, because we would like to make sure that all software representatives can be involved, and there is a diversity also considered. So we are aware that there might be industry trade organization with a bigger forum or other with a smaller forum. So we would like really to give the chance to everybody. Please make sure that you submit, if you're interested, you engage with your industry trade organizations, and also try to make sure that there is a difference between the nominations. We have targeted 3 situations. There might be MAHs who have their own software developers in-house, but of course some MAHs may also have be clients of a specific software developer company or vendor company. There can be different situations. There can also be a third situation where actually there are independent software development companies who yet do not have any clients. So in this case, we would also make sure that they can also come and take a part of this UAT. Of course, essential technical requirements and expertise are really important for the benefit and also the success of this UAT. We need to make sure that you have experience on the REST API development and integration. You have also skills in reading JSON and XML data and handling, of course, the processes linked to that. And then you need to have knowledge on the FHIR standards and also at least a very strong willingness to learn, because sometimes it might be challenging. So we understand that, and we need people who are really curious and want to understand how FHIR works. Last but not least, you need to have an understanding on the implementation of our API security best practice. And this is mostly all in terms of the UAT and main principles to submit your nomination. Now, I mentioned we circulated this to the industry trade organizations. For those who are not really aware which are the trade organizations that we have targeted. These are a total of 11 TO. It's important for you to know that we have targeted only those industry trade organizations working in human or vet in human. We have excluded the vet only because PMS, of course, only the scope of PMS is to handle only human medicinal products. And I would invite any interested parties to contact the relevant industry trade organizations. If you're not familiar with the acronyms, we are very well aware that it might be challenging. Please click on this link and you will be directed to the main EMA page with a list of all acronyms and links to contact them. And with that, I will now hand over to my colleague, Greta. She's our PMS change management specialist. And please, colleague, I will really invite you to grab your phone, use your laptops, scan the QRD and take part to the survey, because for Marcos and myself, it's very important to engage with you in a more meaningful way. Greta, the floor is yours. I'll stop sharing because I think you will live share the questions and Marcos and I can comment. Thank you. Perfect. Let's wait maybe a minute so everybody can join. Please call it, don't be shy. It's really important for us as an agency to get in contact with you. I see the number is increasing. Thank you. The more attendees we have, the more reliable information we may gather in this survey. So this is really appreciated. Okay. One more minute, maybe, Greta. Maybe it takes a bit of time to join.
So the survey will stay open while we will go to the Q&A session, but you can still fill the survey while we are reading the questions.
Yeah. Okay, so is this the first question? Yeah, okay, the survey is running. So maybe we can share the first one and then we can comment the rest. I don't remember, I think we had a total of 5 or maybe more questions. So we can, yeah, we can show this one. So the first one is, how would you rate your interest in using PMS API to submit authorized product changes? From 1 to 5, okay. I see the majority of the people, even though we don't have all the 154 attendees that I see connected today, just a very minimum number of people are joining this survey, but I see that the majority would rate as in total 4.9, so I see that as positive, at least for me. I don't know, Marcus. So then the next one. Have you read the PMS API Bright implementation guide released in January on PMS website? Okay, half and half. So it's a good news for me and also bad one. So the good news to me is that this webinar was really important, because maybe with this event you have achieved a level of awareness that it might be very useful for you to further have a look also of the right implementation guides, start taking notes and start preparing for that. The bad one is that probably just the fact that we have released on the EMA website, I understand it might be not so transparent, because not everybody always every day looks at it. So we will find a way to improve it. And then I will move, if possible, yeah. Thank you, Greta. How would you rate the maturity of the PMS API implementation guide released? So, okay, it's in the middle. I see the majority of the people joining and just a very limited 8% rated 5, and then 25% of the colleagues who joined Slido rated 4. So, okay, there is still area of improvement. Colleagues, as you may have heard, we have received a lot of comments since the publication of these guides. And we will use the amount of comments that we have received to further improve this guide. And we aim to release it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Luis, by the end of this quarter. So we still have a couple of weeks. Please bear with us, but at least I can tell you that thank you very much, because this has gave us a better understanding of the level of information and how we can further improve it. So thank you in any case. And then, yeah, okay. And then maybe we can move to the, yeah, I see. So there is a bit of work for us, Luis, Rick and Marco. So can we move to the next question, which is a multi-choice question, and is how much time, this is key for Marcos and myself, how much time do you need to start testing the PMS API write capability? So now I will need to see how many people have connected. Please join, because this is the key question for us. So the majority of the people have 35% 3 months, but also, yeah, 30% is quite high for us, 6 to 9 months, and just 23 less than 3 months, and 30% more than 9 months. So I would say we need to definitely discuss internally how to extend, you know, the our plan to open PMS API write, because if you need more time, it means that we need also to extend the timelines for launching the UAT on PMS API. So this is important for us. I will thank you again. And I think we have the last one, which is free text fields. I really encourage you to submit the most the most important key aspect that you need from us as EMA to start testing the use of PMS API write capability. So I see you need examples, clear examples probably, UAT test environment and sandbox. This is, yeah, I saw some comments on the Slido on that, and also the, yeah, that's an example. So this is taken. Just to reassure a few people, the sandbox or any UAT test environment is in the radar for the agency. Unfortunately, we have a limited capacity, and we had to take a decision to prioritize specific elements rather than on top of others. So that's why it's not coming at the same time or even before the opening of the UAT. But there is always ground to improve, so I'll make sure we can keep our management informed about that. So thank you. And now I think we have, yeah, 30-minute questions, and I'll leave you the floor to you, Greta, so you can share the key questions. I have, colleagues, I have started the unanswered one, and then we will be showing also the most voted ones, but the ones that where we have replied, we won't be showing. So in the interest of time, we can cover almost everything. Greta, will you moderate, or do you want me to read them? I can moderate. Okay. So can EMA share the PMS sample file XML or JSON for software developers to understand more? Sample meaning to similar to XCVPRM XML. So I don't know who from the specialists, Andre, Rick, Marco, Luis, would like to take this, but I think this is a question for you.
Yes, in short, yes, we will provide an update to the implementation guide, which will include examples.
Perfect. Thank you, Andre.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. I can moderate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. For pack size enrichment, the example shown still uses R4 with an extension, while R5 uses contain item quantity. Can you confirm that we need to use R5?
Yes, we need to use R5 for the write capability. Indeed, the examples in the slides that I showed, I guess this is referring to that. We're taking from the read API, which uses the R5 preview 2 approach with extensions. So contain item quantity will be used in their write capability, and reading data through that capability will also be in line with R5. So I'll read this one. What is? I think they're all very technical. So, what is going to be the approach to file format version usage? Are the new versions going to be adopted to some defined schedule or something? So for now, our intended approach is to adopt R5, Fire R5 major for both read and write, and release this as a full API capabilities. There is currently no plan to work towards Fire R6, which is in piloting mode. We need to assess what are the differences and whether they are relevant to our data model and to our requirements. So for now, R5 is our target, which we want to do in the following years.
Perfect. Thank you. We can go to the last start question. Could you please clarify get everything can be done in Fire 5.0 slide 43 or Fire 4.4.0 only per slide 61?
So it will be available in both versions. Fire 4.40 includes all the data that we have in the PMS API in that format, because that is the full read capability. When it comes to the write capability, you will only be able to read the resources relevant to the updates that we expect. So what Louis presented. Louis, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, the answer is both.
Sure. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't think we have any more start questions. Oh, here. Could you tell when the Fire API will be available for RMS or OMS?
For now, there are no plans to adopt the Fire standard on RMS or OMS. So we do not know yet. Or for now, the answer is it will not be available in Fire.
So Greta, just a minor information, colleagues. I saw that in the backend, everybody replied to any questions. So thank you very much for that. I'm starring the most voted questions, so at least we can transparently share with everybody in case you haven't seen it. And the more you submit it, the more I'll star the unanswered. So thank you.
Thank you, Veronica.
Sorry, Greta, what you can do is remove the start filter and you put all and then the most popular, yeah.
Perfect.
So you
Thank
can
you.
remove this and now we have the, yeah.
Perfect. So let's go with this one. Programming against a paper spec is not very efficient. The sandbox will be needed now, not in 26. Any chance to set that it up earlier? Any have to set up our own test server?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. This aspect is considered at the agency. It was already considered before planning the UAT. Nevertheless, for transparency, we had to take a decision on what to prioritize because we have a limited capacity. We are also running in the middle of knowledge transfer for our developers, so we couldn't really afford it in terms of capacity. The release of this sandbox or any test environment to allow any agents to practicing before submitting data into PMS Bright MVP. Nevertheless, we have, I personally have raised these comments, and I'm sure there will be more discussion inside, but just to reassure you, you're listened. We have already considered this aspect. It's just that probably it might come a bit after the release of the PUI write capability, but we need to see, because I noticed that many colleagues, you have voted that you need more time to implement the write API, so that might be ground for us to discuss and reshuffle a bit of things. Bear with us. We will communicate everything in due time. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. So, you said about the PMS Write API, it will definitely be in the milestone for 2026. Does it mean available in 2026 or available in order to meet the 2026 milestone for PMS enrichment?
I don't know, Marcus, if you want to take it, otherwise I'll take it. But in essence, we need to release the right API to enable Big Pharma to submit a large volume of data in a meaningful way. We know that P-user interface is not ideal for those kind of companies, particularly maybe generics or any company who has their own RIM systems in place. We targeted actually, we will target end of 25, but judging from the latest interaction we had, we might need to switch to 26. It really depends, but in essence, it's available in 26, ready for production and for use.
Thank you. If MAH are not ready to submit data through the PMS API in 2025 due to late release of API in their RMS, will the timelines to reach PMS data from ESMP be extended?
I can take this. So the timelines that we have were agreed with the ESMP based on their needs. So at the moment, there is no information whether this can be extended or not. The timelines will remain as they are. But based on the feedback that we gathered, of course, there will be internal discussion to update also this group, the ESMP group, to make them aware that probably MAH is relying on API and using the RIM system needs more time to fully use it. So for the moment, the deadlines remains as they are, but we will communicate in case there is any change of the plan.
Perfect, thank you. So let's go to the next one. PMS Write API will be published at the end.
Great, I think you can skip this one, is the same as the previous one.
Okay. Let's find my pointer. Well, what is the alternative for MAH that continued with EXMTD but do not have resources of software for PMS integration?
I think I cannot see this question, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know, but my pointer does not work.
I can see that now. I don't know you, but I can see. It says if MAH are not ready to submit data through the PMS API in 25 due to the late release of API.
We have replied to this
you
one.
replied already, but you can still use PUI. We know it might be painful for generics companies, but you can still use the PUI, and we'll be releasing soon at the end of Q2 the bulk upload in PUI. So next one, and if there is any new question, I will then encourage my colleagues maybe to start because I don't see.
But I don't know why my...
I see few, so I'm starting. So this is the confirmation is a live webinar. I'm starring those that are unreplied. Maybe. Yeah.
Let me share again my screen.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, now I can. Perfect. So I will go to start question.
No, you can keep. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I see that the start one are unreplied. So indeed, yeah.
What is the alternative for MAH that continue with the XMPD but do not have resources? Oh, this is the same one as before. Resources or software for PMS integration?
No, maybe Marcus, we can take this one.
Yeah, so there is, I mean, you still need to submit data through XCBMPD as you have been doing right now. If you don't have any software or any RIMS that is integrated with PMS, there is no problem. You need to still submit data through XCBMPD. You can do it through EasyWeb. That is fine. I have seen a couple of questions. So the PMS API, the right capability for the moment is only for specific fields that Andre, Luis, and Rick has already shared. So it's the manufacturers, business operations, and the structured pack size data. This data is not submitted to XCVMPD, and that's why this is done either through the product UI or through the PMS API. But then the rest of the information should still be submitted through XCVMPD as you are doing it right now. So your packages, your products, all this information should be done through XCVMPD and just complement specific information for non-caps through the API or the product UI. So if you don't have an integration with PMS, you still should do your XCVMPD submissions as you are doing right now. And I hope that clarifies the scope of all these submissions.
Thank you, Marcus. So in the HTML documentation for package product definition, the description and marketing status attributes are mandatory. Do we need to populate these elements with submitting the pack size enrichment?
So I don't know if someone from the technical team can take this. I can have a guess, but maybe, yeah.
The short answer is yes, you do, even though technically that isn't necessary in business terms, because we will be sort of ignoring that data because the merge takes place on only other fields. Yes, we'd like you to submit all of the data, and that's the data that you get down from the right API using the $everything. So we expect you to submit all of the data back again, even though technically we understand that that might not be necessary in theory. In practice, we'd like you to send it all back again, please. Yes.
Thank you. Can we use the right API to convert from 4.4 to 5?
So not directly in terms of can you send some data in one format and immediately receive it back in the other format? No, we don't have a conversion ability, but the right API will retrieve the data in 500, only for the 4 resources that right API deals with, by the way. But yes, it will return it in 500, which is different from the 440 that the PMS read API uses. So you can get it in both formats. So in some ways, then you can consider that a conversion, but it's not a direct, can you convert this for me?
Thank you. This one is for Veronica, whoever wants to has the answer. In future, how does EMA anticipate that safety system vendors access an entire set of MPID data for creating a repository which can be accessed and allow population of MPID fields when processing ICSRs for submission to EV human?
So thank you for the question. I must say it's a bit beyond at least the scope of 2025. At the moment, we're just aiming, as we said, to test and open the limited right MVP. But it's linked to another aspect. So currently the submission and the population of the elements to allow the data submission of ICSRs into ultravigilance is indeed hosted into the ultravigilance systems. So the current process that you have until today will be the same at the moment. What we need to work in the backend to let you see the difference in future is that we need to make sure first that we are able to open the full PMS data enrichment and also to switch, to let the MAHs to switch from the submission from XCVMPD for the authorized products at the minimum to PMS. And on top of that, this is the core components, let's say, of the whole XCVMPD decommissioning. We need to make sure also that the data can be from PMS loaded back to XCVMPD. Why I'm saying this? Because XCVMPD is the repository of authorized product data in place since 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And XCVMPD is also linked to many different systems, including EV human for the SSR reporting. So until we are not yet able to do these activities before, you cannot switch from any other access or system. So the safety system is supposed to be, as always, compliant with our policy. It's not going to change. What will change is the process to access the data, specifically for the SSR reporting. But it's still beyond the current scope, at least for 2025, as I was saying. We still need a strategy and approach dedicated to that. But thank you for the question. It's a good point.
Thank you, Veronica, for the answer. And if there are no more answers that you want to show, your answer to every answer and every question, we can go to the survey. Okay. So please fill the survey, which is for to give us any feedback on the webinar, so that we can improve if there are any areas of improvement for us.
Today is plenty of survey. So yeah, we encourage you to join. I see colleagues are already leaving. We are 5 minutes to the close of the event, but this is also important for us. And after that, just let me know, Greta, when I can show the latest part, so I can close the event with some new next steps information. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your answers. The poll is going to stay open while Veronica show you the final slides. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll share the closing slides. So colleagues, just for you, I know maybe you're more technical than business, but I wanted to show you few opportunity for you to keep in touch with us. The business from MAH and NCA, they always, I think they're very confident with this type of approach, but maybe you are new to that. So if you want to hear more, we always we have actually decided to host a series of Q&A clinics, not only on API, but in this case also on PMS, PUI, and API. So generally PMS, and the two different types of accessibility via UI and API. There is one every month. These are the event page. Soon the colleagues will publish will publish the presentation, so you can directly click on this link and you will be directed to the registration page. In addition to that, we are part of the value stream, as I was mentioning before. We work in Agile, and we are hosting quarterly public system demo for everybody to join and to follow us on the latest developments. Not only on PMS, actually this is for the whole projects at the agency, SMP, AF, API, and many, many others. Another opportunity is if you're interested and you're a user of SPOR, XVMPD, via even API, not only the portal, we have live broadcast events scheduled through the year, and April, July, October are the months where we plan to host this event. And last but not least, after the first success, we hosted a PMS Info Day last year. We decided to go to define schedule another second wave of PMS Info Day. This is scheduled for the 21st of May 2025, the full day, and it's live broadcast. So there is plenty of opportunity if you want to follow or engage with us. If you are very technical, I will recommend you the Q&A clinics, and this time I think I will make sure also our experts can join in case there are any specific questions to that. You don't see here another webinar because we need to wrap up the final results that you gave us through the survey, the first survey on the readiness of right PMS API. But Marcos and I do not exclude the possibility to further engage with another workshop or webinar. We need to define the strategy with the MAHs and their developers and vendors, even independent vendors. We need to see that, but that is in the plan. Last but not least, these are all ways that you can have to stay informed. We have PMS new webpage, newsletter, webinars, as I was saying, a lot of documents. I know it's cumbersome and might be complex to them all, but this is really where you can find most of the answers. Quarterly system demo, as I was saying, and PMS webpage, usually always updated. Then, if you want, please subscribe to the quarterly PLM Inside newsletter. This is a tool that we use to share and keep the audience up to date with the latest changes and progresses with PMS and the overall the PLM product lifecycle management value stream. And with that, I think I thank you, everybody. I hope you found it useful. We will wrap up, and for those who submitted maybe after I can't see actually any new question, we will make sure we answer to the remaining ones. And I don't exclude we might publish also in the event page the Q&A document of this event and the question that you submitted. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good weekend.